So thank you for being here today for our Red Ribbon Week presentation. Um, we are going to go for maybe about 2 hours, maybe a little less today. So bear with me. We do have some engagement pieces built in with polls. So make sure to keep your phones on hand or utilize the link that will be dropped into the chat to participate in some of our polls. If you are new here, our team here at LACO consists of 5 of us now. We have Mark Hernandez, who is our program coordinator. You will be interacting with him in the chat with questions or comments that you may have throughout the presentation. Derek Reed is our senior program specialist who is not here today. He is on a well-deserved vacation. But we have our newest member here today, Kira McNeely, who is our senior program activity specialist. She is going to be doing youth, student, family, and community engagement. So if any of you out there at schools are in need of any of those, Kira is going to be your person. And then we, of course, have Monica Gaxiella, who is our accounting technician. She gets to tell us how much money we have to spend and how much money we don't. If you are new to our unit, the TUPE unit here at LACO, we are sort of a support system for all 80 LEAs in Los Angeles County. Some of our goals are to build capacity. We do that by providing training, support, educational materials, but also facilitating collaboration between LEAs, between other community organizations, and kind of just meeting schools, school districts, and school sites where they're at in terms of the support they need. My name is Linnell Lujan. I am your presenter today. I'm a senior program specialist here with the TUPE unit. And just to give you a little insight of my background, because it will come up throughout the presentation. I have a single subject in social science. I used to teach middle and high school for 10 years before coming here to the TUPE unit. I taught things like civics and government, US history, ethnic studies. But my 3 years here at TUPE has been primarily based on building capacity. I do trainings for staff. I do trainings for um, conferences. We help support, offer technical support to schools and school districts. But specifically, I focus a lot on curriculum prevention and alternatives to suspension when it comes to intervention and vaping on campus. A little housekeeping. As mentioned earlier, we do want you to participate and engage. Please feel free to answer your questions as they come. You can drop them into the chat. Mark will be answering them for you. Even if you have comments or maybe just wonderings, please feel free to use the chat. And also feel free to engage in the 2 polls that we have during this presentation. This training is being recorded, so it will be shared with you. After our presentation is over, we will be sending out supporting materials with the slides, with the recording, and any other resources that are mentioned in our presentation today. We also have closed captioning enabled, so if that is something that you need, you can go ahead and enable that. So a quick little overview. We will be going over, obviously, the Red Ribbon campaign, a little brief history on that, just to kind of set us up for the sort of the meat and potatoes of our presentation, which is going to be about youth advocacy and youth engagement. We will end with some youth organizations that you can reach out to who are already doing youth advocacy work, and then resources that, again, are mentioned in this presentation, or supports and resources that come out of our office free of charge. When we get to the second part, our advocacy and youth engagement, what we'll be going over is what I call the 4 Ws. We'll talk a little bit about why youth engagement is so important. We'll talk about where to find students to engage in these youth advocacy groups on campus. We'll talk about what events or activities that you can do with these students, with these groups, or just with students on your campus in general. And then we'll talk about the when. When can we do this that is beyond Red Ribbon Week? Where can we fit this into our school calendars, into our school events, and how we would do that? So let's start in the obvious place. Red Ribbon Week, right? I don't know about your personal knowledge or experience with Red Ribbon Week, but I'm going to share a little bit about mine. As I mentioned before, I came from a secondary classroom. I taught 5 years in middle school and 5 years in high school. But Red Ribbon Week for me really started as a student, right? I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I just knew that Red Ribbon Week was really the Say No to Drugs campaign, right? That's what it was. Say no to drugs, be drug free, get a red ribbon, get a prize, whatever my school had to offer. As an adult, I mostly worked at schools that were very small, magnet schools, charter schools, things like that. And because of that, as a teacher, I wore a lot of different hats. One of the hats that I had to wear was being in charge of my school site's Red Ribbon Week. I knew at that point that it was a week-long event. I knew that there was always a door decorating contest in my district. That was a huge deal in the elementary schools, not so much in the middle and the high schools. It was usually, the winner was usually determined by, I believe it was like our school police. We passed out some swag, some prizes. At the high school level, that was only if we had funding. And even then, sometimes the swag was kind of elementary school like centered. So sometimes the students wouldn't be that excited about it. And sometimes there'd be events, sometimes there'd be assemblies. It really fell on the teacher who was usually voluntold to do those things. But my time here in this unit, I started to realize that my time as a teacher in charge of this event, how meaningful or impactful was it for students, especially if for me, it was really just something that I was voluntold to do. I had my prior knowledge as to what Red Ribbon Week was as a student, which was the Say No to Drugs Week. And it begs the question of like, how half-hearted was the attempt, right? And so it really brought me to this question of, do our students really know what Red Ribbon Week is? Some schools do really, really great jobs at it, and I've seen them, right? My school at my time, I will admit, I wasn't the best at it. So in that respect, why do we do Red Ribbon Week? What is it for? Are we just going through the motions? And one of the things that I failed to do was actually go to the website. The website has really, really great pieces of information, activities, suggestions, resources. This year, the theme is Life as a Movie, Film Drug Free. Every year, the Red Ribbon campaign has a contest where students can submit the newest theme. And every year, a winner is chosen. And that theme is chosen for the following year. Another thing that I found on the website that I thought was really useful is this quick little video for students.
We asked middle and high school students what they think about when they hear the words Red Ribbon Week.
Staying away from drugs.
Red ribbons displayed all over school.
Making healthy choices for our future.
That is true now, but do you know the history of Red Ribbon? In 1985, a DEA agent named Kiki Camarena was kidnapped, tortured, and killed in Mexico, working to prevent drug dealers from bringing drugs into the United States. After his funeral, his friends and family began wearing red ribbons as a way of showing their love of Kiki and their respect for his hard work to keep kids safe, healthy, and drug-free. That led to Red Ribbon campaign celebrations across the country and eventually a National Red Ribbon Week in 1988. Red Ribbon Week should be educational and fun, but we can't forget to take a moment to honor the memory of DEA agent Kiki Camarena and his family.
Thank you, Agent Camarena.
We appreciate you, Camarena family.
Thanks for your sacrifice, Kiki Camarena.
So I'll be honest, when I left the classroom, I was teaching 11th and 12th grade students. I will say that my 16, 17, and 18-year-old students probably would not react well to this video because it is very, very maybe elementary centric, right? However, I, as an adult, watched that very quick video. And at the beginning of my knowledge of Red Ribbon Week, I didn't know very much about DEA officer Kiki Camarena. I didn't know what he did or why he did it. I didn't know the story behind it. So while this video can be very like geared towards younger students, it still is something very quick and very easy to show all of our students to give a little bit of some anticipatory sets and background information as to where what Red Ribbon Week is.
We
Another thing on the websites that you can find are some really great resources, downloads, activities. They even have different social media where during that week you could get a lot of information and a lot of really great ideas to use during Red Ribbon Week. I admit that I should have done my research when I was voluntold to take over Red Ribbon Week. It definitely could have been more meaningful. It could have been more impactful than it actually was. And this is just sort of my way of there are resources out there. The website does a really, really great job of doing that. They have downloadable resources. I really love their Mindful Mondays section where they put out some great little tidbits about, you know, just mindfulness and being drug free. So with that said, yes, all schools observe Red Ribbon Week. We do some varying different activities, but we're really here to talk about what do we do beyond just that 1 week in October. So first, we're going to venture into the why. Why do we do sort of this advocacy work? Why is it important? And one of these, this quote here by Robert F. Kennedy, I really liked because it talks about this generation, right? Whatever this generation is. So few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. And in the total of all those acts will be written the history of this generation. And again, this quote can be sort of like a living quote, right? Because no matter what generation we're talking about, this quote really resonates in that we are talking about this generation, these students, right? What are they doing? What are they experiencing? And how are they going to be a part of making change? So, what is advocacy, right? Very simple. An advocate is a person who argues for a cause, a supporter or a defender of something. It is to advocate, to act in support of a particular issue or cause. Essentially, advocacy is the process of standing up for what you believe in and influencing others to change the way that they think and act about an issue. Now, this is really, really important because I kind of see that the generation right now, Generation Z and the Alpha generation, with the advent of social media, with the advent of the internet and having so much information at their fingertips, that they have the opportunity to be influential. One of the parts that stands out to me is this: standing up for what you believe in and influencing others. We know that students are interacting with the internet and social media a lot, and you have influencers, right? Sometimes there are students that you'll ask them, what do they want to do when they grow up? And a lot of times you hear them say, I want to be an influencer, right? I feel as the adults in their family and their lives and the teachers that that are sort of guiding these students. My my hope is that they want to be influencers of change rather than say like an influencer of some clothing brand or a sports team, right? We know that our students are capable of it. We just need to be able to facilitate and support them and help them, guide them into influencing in ways that can benefit everyone. Another thing is giving students voice and choice, right? Keeping youth at the center, giving them the ability and the opportunity to be engaged, to make meaningful and equitable changes in programs, policies, systems, again, in the things that affect their lives and the things that they feel passionate about. So, how do we prepare and equip students with the necessary tools to and practices to do this kind of work? How do we equip them to, again, make changes in their communities, in their lives, in the things that affect them? And one way is youth development. Youth development can be project based learning that provides students with the knowledge and skills to live a healthy life. For us today, we're really looking at that through the lens of tobacco, vape, or marijuana free, because we're talking about this youth development or youth engagement in terms of health promotion. And so, to go over that a little bit more specifically, some of the great benefits of involving young people in tobacco control or in the tobacco control movement are their excitement and their energy and their eagerness. Once youth have been educated about the harmful effects of tobacco and e-cigarette use, and how the industry is manipulating them and targeting them, they are usually eager to join the efforts against tobacco. No student, no teenager likes to find out that they're being manipulated or that they're being used. And so this is usually something that young people kind of rise up against, whatever the reason. One thing is clear: the youth are willing to fully embrace the cause. They are willing to stand up for their beliefs. They're willing to try to make a difference in people's lives. And some of the reasons why are listed here, right? Students that I've talked to, sometimes they will say that they've had friends or family members who have become ill or sick from smoking. And these are people in their lives that they love, right? And so usually this makes students more adverse to tobacco and smoking. They themselves have tried it and either don't like the smell or the taste, or they don't like the way it has affected their friends and their relationships. Again, sometimes students are aware that the tobacco industry is targeting them, and nobody likes to be targeted, right? And so in the meantime, students can learn valuable skills while doing this type of youth engagement, advocacy. We know the reasons why, but now we need to talk a little bit about, again, as adults in their lives, how do we facilitate their growth in this work? So, our first poll is going to be about that. What are some benefits of students being involved in youth engagement? We have two different ways of doing this. And let me kind of get you can either scan the QR code with your phone that you see on the screen, or you can click on the link that is in the chat. You can answer or submit as many answers as you'd like. So there is no limit. You could put more than one. But we're looking for 1 to 2 word answers. What are some skills that students can learn when engaging in youth advocacy group? Think about our student leaders, right? Think about some of the SEL skills that they can learn, some of the relationships that they can build. Go ahead, take a moment to enter in your submissions. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. Go ahead and keep entering your submissions. That's totally fine. But some of them are coming in, and we can see a lot of great ones, right? When students are engaging in youth advocacy work, civic engagement, yes, they're learning a lot of different skills, right? Or honing in on some skills that they've already have. Teamwork and leadership, absolutely. To do this work, those are super, super important, right? Empathy, absolutely. Being able to be equitable and inclusive in the work that they do. Public speaking, again, as a high school teacher, even middle school, public speaking is really difficult for a lot of students. It's really difficult for a lot of adults, right? But getting them used to that in at this age and getting them ready and prepared and comfortable with that is a great skill to have. Communication, absolute problem solving, yes. A lot of teens really struggle with that, right? Problem solving. They love to just get the answer and not have to go through that work. Advocacy work, yes. Community, relationships, absolutely. Building relationships and sustaining those relationships, right? These are great. Love them. Keep them coming. I will keep that open for a little bit. But this is all true, right? Aside from the great work that they'll be doing while they're engaging, the other part of that, or the other benefit of that, is students learn these skills. They hone in on these skills. They continue to practice these skills while they're doing this type of work. And this is all Common Core, right? Common Core work, SEL work. They're getting it through this advocacy work. Some of the ones you mentioned, right? Empowerment. Students feel empowered when they're given voice and choice, when they're given leadership roles, when they're given the trust to do something and lead something. Also, the awareness, right? In order to do this work, it does take a lot of research and learning and knowing certain things, and having that awareness can also help keep them, once again, healthy, right? Social emotional growth, we saw this a lot in a lot of your responses. um Forging relationships, keeping those relationships, communication, um empathy, that kind of thing. Relationship building, how to work with one another, how to work with other people in the community, other adults, other people their age. Ownership, right? To be proud of something, to take ownership and feel like a purpose, or to feel like they belong to a community. And also, again, Common Core and SEL. Some of these things include things like critical thinking, right? Public speaking. I saw that in one of your responses. Collaborating, how to be creative, how to think outside of the box, but also feeling like they belong, and that they are connected to their school, that they have a sense of purpose, that they have a sense of pride, that the adults at their school trust them to lead in something. It's one thing to tell a student, just say no, right? It's one thing to tell students, just don't do drugs, uh, and then just hope that they do it. It's another thing to involve students in their own messaging, so that not they don't only just understand why they're saying no to these things, but they're also advocating and spreading that message to their peers, to the people that they care about, to people that they maybe don't know but still care about their health and well-being. So how do we ensure that youth are getting the maximum amount of skills and benefits from engaging in these youth groups? That's going to bring us to the ladder of youth participation. This is Hart's ladder, which has been adapted for youth. Hart as in HART. You may have heard of it. And this is specifically about children's participation. We want to stay outside of the orange part, right? The non-participation. We want to stay somewhere within the degrees of participation in the green. There is a piece to this, a disclaimer that, of course, the very, very top, the youth initiated, this is not going to be able to be achieved by, say, maybe our 6-year-old first graders, right? There is going to need a level of age appropriateness for some of these. But either way, we still want to stay out of that non-participation part. So let's look at what these are specifically. Manipulation is a non-participation where youth do not understand the issue. They don't understand why they're participating in whatever the event is. They don't know what role they play in it. Sometimes adults feel that the ends justify the means. So here, just let the student do it or make them do it and check the box and we did our job, right? If children don't have the understanding of the issue, uh, then they're being asked to do something or manipulated to do it. A great example of this would be a preschool child carrying a political placard concerning, let's say, the impacts of social policies on children. But of course, this preschooler does not understand the issue, does not know what role they play in that issue, doesn't have any thoughts about that political process, but they're being asked to hold this poster or this card in response to that issue. This would be a manipulation. Next, we're going to look at decoration. Decoration is another non-participation. This is when children and youth are put on public display during an event, a performance, or an activity. A great example of this would be children who are given t-shirts related to a cause. They might be asked to do something like sing or dance, but they have little idea of what it's all about. They have no way to say no to this event. They're not a part of the organization of it. They're asked to perform and do a nice little dance, but they don't know why. They don't know what the issue is. They're just doing what they're told. This is an example of decoration. Tokenism is our last part of non-participation. This is when children are apparently given a voice. It looks like they've been given a voice, but in fact, they have little or no choice about the subject or the style of communicating it. This can look like conference panels, right? Asking a student to sit on a panel or telling them to sit on a panel. It seems like they have a voice, right? Because they're responding to something, but they have been fed maybe some of the answers or the subject or the way that they're communicating it. And so this is termed as tokenism. Now we get into the degrees of participation. Assigned but informed. This is when the youth understand the intent. They know how decisions were made, but they weren't involved in making those decisions. They have some meaningful roles, and they volunteer for this project, so they're not being forced. They made the decision to be a part of it after it was explained to them. A great example of this would be a World Summit of Children held at the United Nations headquarters. But this would be difficult to include young people genuinely, given the complexity and scale of planning. So young people wouldn't be able to do something like participating in the United Nations headquarters because you need some level of adult planning and putting together. Consulted and informed. So you're not necessarily assigned, but you're consulted. This is when children act as consultants for adults in a manner which has great integrity. The project is designed and run by adults, but children understand the process and their opinions are taken seriously. So this could be an adult-led survey where the adults are kind of facilitating, but the youth have their opinions and their suggestions taken into consideration. Adult initiated and shared decisions with youth. This is when adults initiate participatory projects, but they share decision-making authority or management, like a youth newspaper. Again, a higher level of adults kind of facilitating and overseeing, but it's really run by the youth of that newspaper or that group. Next is youth initiated and directed. So again, now that we're getting into the higher parts, you can see how maybe some of these can't really be achieved in the younger grades because there needs to be some level of adult interaction. But as we get higher, you see that adult oversight is pulled more and more. So youth initiated and directed is when children and youth conceptualize and carry out a complex project by working together, while the adults may observe and maybe assist the children when needed, but they do not interfere with the process or play a directive role. So this is where students are taking more of a leadership and more responsibility, where the adults are just kind of overseeing to make sure that everything is running smoothly. This is hard to find an example of because this doesn't happen often. It's usually difficult for adults to be able to do this. And it's hard for adults not to play a directing role and to stand back and let students completely take over. Finally, your youth initiated and shared decisions with adults. Again, age appropriateness would be in your higher grades. You're not going to see this in elementary because, of course, you can't leave some things up to, say, a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old because they don't have the skills to do it yet. But this is when children who are usually teenaged share decision-making authority, management, or power with adults as partners and allies. So there is no hierarchy. No one is in charge. No one has more authority to make the final decisions over the other. The adults and the children work together equally. This can be an example where students are partnering with adults to raise funding, they develop and run a school program together, or lead a community campaign. So again, this leads us to the varying different levels. When we're doing this work in advocacy groups, we of course want to aspire to be as high up on Hart's ladder as we possibly can. But there are varying different reasons why it would be difficult to do that, right? One is, again, age appropriateness. Your elementary school kids may not be able to do the very, very highest one just because they're young and they don't have the adult skills to do that. The other thing is, if you are just starting a youth advocacy group, a peer group, it will take time and trust and a lot of work to get as high up on the ladder as possible. Regardless of where you are in working with students or where you are in building that trust, we always still want to stay away from the non-participation, the manipulation, decoration, and tokenism. So where do we find students? Where do we find students to do this work? Where do we find students to build some of these peer programs? Some of you might be starting from the very beginning. Some may be inheriting a program that has been started, but you're trying to renew its efforts or sustain it. Some of you may be leading a very, very strong program for many years, and you're just trying to enhance it. In this next section, we'll cover where to begin, how to add new strategies, what you're already doing, or how to strengthen existing programs. And with that, we're going to start off with an example from a school that we work with in Pomona Unified School Districts. In this short clip, Cheryl Lee Grove is going to talk a little bit about how she started some of her peer programs and how in some areas she had to invent the wheel, but in other areas she kind of tapped into what was already existing in her district.
These projects. So some of the school sites have done it a little differently, where sometimes the advisors are the avid teachers. And so what they'll do is they'll use their avid group for their TUPE group. Some of the schools have used their ASB because the ASB advisors are the ones who have volunteered to be the TUPE advisor for the school site. So this way our schools aren't working so hard, our teachers aren't working so hard, because we just want to make it work smarter. And then we have a really strong peer counseling groups in our district. So it's the peer counselors. And within their curriculum, they've implemented peer education. So they do their lessons on ATOD education, and the peer counselors then do peer education, and they go into other classrooms and teach their peers on that. So we usually get a lot of projects out of the school sites where they are an existing group. The ones that don't have a block, sometimes it's because the advisors aren't an advisor for anything else. And so they've selected to just create a TUPE after school club or lunch club or something like that, so that they.
So as you can see, Pomona USD, what they did is when they decided to implement their TUPE clubs, which again, we're looking at this from our tobacco use prevention education lens, they decided to start off where they already had existing programs. ASB is always my first go-to because ASB is already established. Some of this work kind of falls under some of the things that they're already doing. But Pomona USD had varying different stages and varying different existing things where they were able to implement their TUPE programs in ASB or in AVID or in schools that had a peer counseling program. In some schools, they didn't have any of the existing programs just mentioned. And so, like she said, they decided to then start from square one in those schools and create after school programs or some sort of program where they couldn't already fit it in. That is all to say that when doing this work, especially if you're doing it district-wide or even at school sites, possibly tapping into programs or groups that already exist might be the way to start instead of, again, having to reinvent the wheel. If you are reinventing the wheel from the ground up, that's perfectly fine as well, because we'll talk a little bit later about the how. How do we do that? So let's talk about how do we share this power? How do we get the maximum amount of participation from our students? And one way to do that is to prepare for the partnership before engaging with youth, right? Especially if you are starting from the ground up, this is new, you really want to try to engage youth in, again, maybe it's an after school club, a lunch club, a peer program, maybe it's a class on your campus. One of the worst things to do is to come unprepared, right? We want to honor our young people's time, their busy schedule. And if we are trying to share power with them, we also want to be on the same level of them, right? So the first thing is looking at your priority population. When we're looking for students for this kind of work, what type of students are you looking for? Identifying the group that you're trying to reach at first is going to be the first step, the first important step, right? Are you looking for just those students who are involved in everything, right? You might not be. You might be looking for those movable middle of the road students who you think would really benefit from being involved, from having some sort of passion, from having some sort of engagement that might help their, social emotional relationships, right? Based on your goals, what groups are you trying to reach? Are you going to look at age, right? Maybe this is a junior senior group or an eighth grade group rather than a ninth and sixth grade group. Are you looking specifically for a certain cultural background, certain grades? Do students have to have the grades to be in this group? Knowing this will ensure that the work will feel like a good fit for them and for you. Knowing what the process is beforehand. How are you going to select students? Will there be interviews? Are you going to do recommendations from teachers, or can students just recommend themselves? Is there an application process? Do any of those pose a barrier for students, a barrier that maybe you don't want students to have to hurdle over? And so maybe those don't fit. Knowing what you want in terms of the selection process, and then preparing for that. We want to make sure that it is easy and attainable. So something like a 3-page essay, right, might not be the best process, but we want to ensure that you're attracting a wide range of youth. You want to make sure that you're getting various different students to participate in this. Recruitment. Initially, the thought is to reach out to existing programs again, that might be doing similar work to yours. That could be clubs, after school clubs, things like that. But are these students who are already motivated to participate in this extracurricular activity? However, keep in mind that this may not bring in the most diverse group of students and the most diverse lenses and experiences. Another way to do recruitment might be flyers, social media, if your school has that, announcements. You want to try to reach every student, right? Again, not just the ones that are always volunteering for things. You want to reach everyone. You want to try to get the attention of students who don't usually volunteer for these types of things. Finally, figuring out what the roles and expectations are. Communicate the youth roles and expectations very clearly is going to be important. It's important for us to articulate what we expect, and what we expect from the roles that the youth will be in. This is going to help them understand better what their role will be. The hope is that they will be more inclined to join and volunteer. But the other part is that youth input and their ideas are going to depend on how they understand their roles and expectations. We want to create a space for group agreements and expectations so that they can, again, reach some of those higher levels of participation. Next, we need to really talk about sharing power with young people. That is going to be one of the most important things. Sharing power provides young people the platform to use their voice. Again, we talked about voice and choice, the importance of students feeling like they own their decisions, that they have something invested in the work that they're doing. For some of us, and I am totally speaking from my experience, this can actually be very difficult. Again, I come from a student of the 80s and 90s, and it was very teacher-student relationship. You listened to everything the teacher told you to do, even if it didn't make sense, right? You were a good student if you took direction and did everything that the teacher told you to do. You never made really a lot of decisions on your own. You got directions, you got instructions, you did it, you turned in your homework, you were a good student, right? Um, However, that's not really conducive to this type of youth advocacy work, right? We want our students to help in the decision making. We want them to take leadership roles. In a teacher-student relationship, it's most often that the teacher is in full, complete control. When I was a teacher, that is absolutely true, right? I am in charge of keeping my students safe. I am in charge of making sure that my students, master whatever the standard or the topic is for that class. But when it comes to this type of work, we need to adjust. Remember that voice and choice is really, really important. And it will be an adjustment for students as well. They are not used to sharing power with adults. Structured roles. We need to talk a little bit about roles that should be structured with substance. Young people should be engaged. They should play integral roles in that project. Again, this is another way of letting everybody know what the roles are for the students, for the adults. An example is a student should not present at a conference if they weren't engaged in the project or didn't contribute to the presentation at all, right? I'm always going to fall back on my teacher experience. This is kind of the equivalent of that one student in that one group who, didn't do any of the work. On the day of the presentation, their group member said, here, just read this slide. And it's totally obvious that the student didn't make the slide, didn't know anything about the slide, doesn't even know what the assignment was. But the group members decided to give that student, a script so that they can all get a good grade, right? We don't want to do that with our students. We want to clearly let them know that their role is meaningful, that they are involved. We want them to not only know their role, but to fulfill it, right? And finally, the other part is to resist. Again, as adults, especially on a school campus, we are used to being in control. We are used to having the responsibility of being in control and being in charge of our students. But we have to sort of resist that when we're working with students in this youth engagement and advocacy. We want the engagement to be meaningful for them. And we want them to, again, feel like they own something because they have been given the responsibility to do it. So our role is to listen to young people, to help and support and guide their efforts. And it's important that they see themselves in the work that they're doing. A lot of this information and more information came from this source from restlessdevelopment.org. This is a quick checklist on power shifting when it comes to student and adult advocacy work together. This will be in the resources that I'll share with you later, so do not fret. I will be sharing that with you, and that will be available to you. Another thing that we're looking at is recruitment. How do we recruit students, right? How do we get them interested? This is a great example of a recruitment letter. This comes from a book that is associated with a training called Peer Advocates in Action, which I will talk a little bit more about later. But this was developed by Hillary Roberts, who does a full complete training on peer advocate work from beginning to end with a lot of great resources like this. She gives a lot of suggestions and a lot of information on, again, you don't want to make this process difficult for students. We want them to be able to access, the application. This is why we probably wouldn't assign a 3-page essay to this. And so knowing who you are recruiting, how you're recruiting is going to be really important. If your organization is at the beginning or looking to strengthen the program that already exists, Peer Advocates is a great resource on how to build that program or how to sustain it. And again, I'll show you some of her stuff a little bit later as well. If you did not notice, what was missing from our 4 W's was the how, right? We talked about the why and the where and the when, but what's missing is the how. And one of the reasons why is because the how is a completely different training. That is something that would take a whole other chunk of time to go over. However, I'm not going to leave you just hanging. There are a couple of programs and a couple of places that you can look to when it comes to the how. How do you run these peer advocacy groups? And so the first one is Hillary Roberts Peer Advocates in Action. We are actually having or hosting one of these 2-day trainings. Since we are hosting it, it is free of charge. At the end of this, I will be giving you a flyer on where to register and on what date. It's in March. I just don't remember the exact dates. So if this is something that you are interested in, you can definitely register with us. It is a 2-day in-person training here at the LACO offices in Downey. And Peer Advocates in Action is a step-by-step training for coordinators of peer programs. They offer trainings that you can request for your whole district for a fee, or again, you can send or attend the one that we are hosting in March. We had one a couple months ago. Our next one is in March. That I believe is the last one for this school year. So if you're interested, I see stuff in the chat. I'm thinking Mark probably dropped it in for you. So if this is something that you are interested in the how you're ready to start this is a great training to attend. Another great place to look is your social science, your history social science department or county office. Now, this might be a little biased because I am a social studies teacher. But when we're talking about civic engagement and advocacy work, it definitely falls under the social sciences. And so we had the former coordinator 3, Dr. Michelle Herzog, do a training for some of our schools on how to do youth civic engagement and advocacy work when it came to tobacco use prevention education. And so this is a quick little snippet about Dr. Herzog talking about how this work doesn't just have to happen in your history classes or your civic and government classes, that youth engagement and civic engagement can be applied to any sort of topic, any sort of class, any sort of subject. And so I'm going to play a little bit of her explaining how this can fit almost anywhere.
So yeah, I'm really happy to be here and look forward to working with you today and tomorrow, and the opportunity to really kick your work up to the next level. I know you're all very interested in your work and tobacco use prevention, with helping young people understand the risks around marijuana use, smoking, vaping, all the great work. I'm familiar with what Mark does, and I know you do similar work here. And I was asked to be part of your work today because we know that your work is dedicated to educating kids about these issues. But what can we do to equip young people to take it to the next level, to take on policy initiatives that would really have long-term effects on ending these use of these substances in a big way? So it's one thing for them to stop using them and maybe educate peers around them, but what can they do to really impact the system as a whole? And that's where civics comes into play. So that's why we've been working together. I've done a few presentations for him last year and glad to be doing it this year too. Because my primary role, I'm the history social studies coordinator at LACO. So yes, I work in the same office as Mark, but my work is really primarily devoted to supporting social studies teachers. But in the realm of civics, we're really moving beyond the boundaries. That civics is not just a social studies thing. That seems like the logical place to put it, because kids are learning about democracy and government and history and all that good stuff. But if we want kids to be civically engaged and impact the world around them, it has to go beyond their social studies. So we're using civics in science class, in health classes, in math classes, in English classes. Last week I did a 3-day training for ROP teachers because they're really interested in getting kids onto career pathways and finding ways for them to bump that up to the next level so they can really impact this.
So again, I feel like I'm a little bit biased because I am a social science teacher. I love social science. I loved teaching government. But she makes a really great point that civic engagement and advocacy doesn't just belong in social science class. It makes sense there, but it could be anywhere. It could be in your science classes and students feeling very strongly of changing policy when it comes to the environment, when it comes to beach cleanups. Youth engagement and advocacy can happen anywhere. And of course, today we're talking about it from the lens of health promotion or anti-vaping or anti-tobacco. And so when looking for resources or looking for training or looking for help, look to your social science teachers, your department chair, look to your social science trainings. Even though Dr. Hertzog is no longer here at LACO, we have Elena Garza, who is the new coordinator 3, who is continuing to do the youth advocacy and youth civic engagement trainings. So if you ever see those trainings come up that are being hosted here at LACO, by all means, take those trainings and learn how to engage students in, I switched it, but in this sort of work, this graphic comes from that training, and it teaches teachers and adults on how to lead students through the inquiry, a system of investigating a topic, doing a civil dialogue, communicating conclusions that they want to see change or policy change, and then what kind of action that they will take to inform the inquiry that they had to begin with. I will be sharing some of Dr. Hertzog's resources from that training, but again, we're not going over the how. I encourage you to look for the how in some of the trainings that we've mentioned. So that brings us to the what. What do we do to engage students? What kind of activities can we do? What kind of things do we already do? And so that brings me to our Red Ribbon Week, right? Again, for me, I saw a lot of door decoration contests, and some of those decorations were great, right? Some teachers and some students got really, really into it. But by my 5th year at the school, the door decorations personally for me got a little boring. And they especially got a little boring for the students, especially the ones who had already been there for the full 4 years and they're doing another door decoration, right? Um, the Spirit Week, oh, I loved those, especially the pajama days, because what job allows you to wear pajamas to work, right? I loved pajama day, and they usually did them on Fridays. But I want to challenge people to move beyond some of the things that we already do, or even heighten some of the things that we do, and try new things, right? Because if we're trying to do this more than just once a year, more than just Red Ribbon Week, then we need a lot of different and exciting activities to share with the students once a month or every other month. And doing a door decoration or a spirit week every month might get a little stagnant. So that brings me to our next poll. School activities. Go ahead and use that QR code again, or use the link in the chat, which is going to be showing up soon. What kind of activities does your school or school district do during Red Ribbon Week or any other events that you might have throughout the school year? We want to see if we can make a collective where all of us can share, and maybe we might see something that we've never seen before that we can now adopt as our own. So what kind of activities or events do you all do? Go ahead. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to drop them into the poll, and then we'll take a look at some of them. Let's see what some of those are. So we've got Spirit Week, Resource Fair. Absolutely. I have definitely been to a lot of those in my current role. PSAs are a big thing right now. We actually host one for our tier twos here. Students love them, especially with the different programs out there for video editing or even podcasts. Pledges, absolutely. That goes hand in hand with some of our red ribbon activities. Ooh, superhero day. I like that. Scavenger hunt. Yes, I love that. I'm going to go over an example of that today, but I love a scavenger hunt. Students love scavenger hunts. And again, working with older students, definitely saw a lot of my 17 and 18-year-olds running all over campus trying to find, whatever it was that we hid for them. Spirit Week, wear red, pajama day, love pajama day, sports day, Disney day, crazy hair day, love it. Bingo cards, I've seen those as well. Those are a great way to make sure that students are visiting different tables or different resources. Presentations in classroom, that is something you can definitely do with some of your advocacy groups or your ASB group. Student-led films, yes, we actually partner with a company, Boyer Studios, that actually is a company that schools pay to come in and do student films and PSAs. They come with all the equipment, they come with all of the guidance. So students really, really love those. You'll see a couple of them later on. So yeah, these are really great. Again, we see a lot of these and some of the work that we do here at TUPE, we are often invited. So if you ever have a resource fair or you have any of these, keep us in mind. We are willing to come out and do tabling events. We will bring educational materials, swag. Sometimes we have pig lungs. I'm going to leave that for Kira to set up or Mark. But we come with a lot of resources. So we definitely would love to be invited to your resource fairs. When you're doing some of this work, we can actually act as a resource for you. Thank you, everyone, for participating in our polls. Hopefully, some of those were some ideas for people, or maybe some renewed interest in some things that you've done. But I'm going to share a few that we have encountered. And my first one is my favorite one. This one is called Healthy Hobbies. And this school did a series of different tables with different types of hobbies. Um, this can coincide with healthy coping skills. Often when I am giving trainings at schools and to teachers or even to students, we want to encourage students to develop healthy coping skills. We want them to engage in a hobby like drawing or reading or crafts or running instead of vaping to feel better, right? Or um, do something that they like listen to music or take up photography rather than dealing with their anxiety through vaping or substance use. And so I really liked these healthy hobby tables because there were different types of tables. There was one, a cooling off during the holidays, which was a craft table where students were creating paper snow what are they called? Oh my goodness, it just left my head. Snowflakes, there we go. But you can use this idea for a lot of different things. You can have, again, I'm going off of my interests, a table for embroidery, like hand embroidery, right? A craft. Maybe it is a table to like share books, a somewhere to create Spotify playlists, just some sort of hobby or craft or something where students can enjoy doing, but also teaching them how to use these as healthy coping skills to relieve their anxiety or their depression rather than turning to substances. Don't get me wrong, I love a good door decoration contest. It's always interesting to see what the students come up with. I myself had a class that won first place because we did a whole Nightmare Before Christmas theme. But again, if we're trying to do this beyond Red Ribbon Week, if we're trying to do this more often, we need to come up with other ideas. Another one is this mental health awareness activity where it's called a self-care jar. And this is where students can give and take. So students can come up with little sayings on Post-its. And the question there is, what is an activity that helps you relax and feel good? And so students might write down what they do, post it there, and then other students can come by and take something of like, oh, I really like to do that activity too. Maybe I can try that the next time I feel anxious or stressed. These are ways to exchange healthy coping skills among students. As you could see off to the sides of that poster are different statistics and different pieces of information that went with their mental health awareness day that students can access and look at. But this is kind of like a nice little, you can have it up during the whole week. Students can add to it and take from it throughout the school days. This is a great activity, again, to promote health, to promote wellness, healthy coping skills, especially during Mental Health Awareness Week. This one comes from me. I grew up in this area. I went to Whittier College. I did not live at Whittier College because I lived so close. But one of the things I really, really liked were these things called installments. I checked recently, they don't do this anymore in our digital world. They have their installments online now. But when I went there, every single month they had a new volume and they would put them in the bathroom stalls of all the bathrooms, both in the dorms and in the classroom buildings. And each one had a theme. This one was sort of like relationship building, right? 5 practical ways to get along with your roommate. And it gave all these different ways to instill those healthy relationships with people that they were, basically tasked to live with in their dorms. I remember another one was about healthy eating and how to eat healthy while they were in school around finals time. There was just like healthy tips on getting enough sleep, getting enough eat, managing your time during finals, managing your stress. And so this is a really, really great way to promote, again, health promotion where students are visiting every day, right? The restrooms. And so this is a great way to kind of get their attention throughout the day in the bathroom stalls. I even like the way that it's called the next installment. Another great idea is to involve the adults on campus with these activities. Again, if we're talking about sharing power with students and being involved with students, we want to show our students that we are involved and that we care, right? Something as simple as a tug of war, but it isn't about the activity, right? It could be anything. The point to this is that the teachers and the people on campus are involved. Again, as a high school teacher, one thing I found to be really effective is to have a friendly competition with your students. Students want the chance to get the best of their baseball coach or their science teacher or their principal. Nothing excites them more than the opportunity to have a friendly competition with their favorite teacher or their favorite coach. It also shows them that the adults on their campus are involved, that they care, that they are willing to go up there and have fun with them, right? So sure, it could be any game. But the main point of this is that the students on campus see that their adults are taking their lunchtime, taking their break to go out and be involved with them. Another one that we saw at schools is peer pong. Now, I will say that this is at your discretion because we know this game, right? It is taken from beer pong. So this is really whether you feel it's appropriate for your school and your community or not. But this school used beer pong as a way to get kids involved in a game. But in each one of those cups was a different message from a peer. So a student would write a little note. You can see in some of the pictures where it says, don't drink and drive, stay drug free. It might say something like, again, a mental health recommendation. And then students will throw the ping pong into the cup. And then whatever message is in that cup is for them to keep. These are just quick little messages to kind of, again, remind students to um, be healthy, stay away from vapes, stay away from substance use, and it gives them a chance to leave messages for their peers, but also play the game themselves and receive messages from their peers. This one is called Ask Me About My Number. And in this club, it was a tobacco use prevention education club. Members wore t-shirts with a large number on the back or the front, and with a little tag under it that said, ask me about my number. And so when a student or even adult on campus asked them about the number, the student would pull out a piece of paper and then give them a tobacco fact card, which they can take to a club advisor to win a prize, win a raffle, but also given the opportunity to take the tobacco-free pledge. And notice how I say given the opportunity, right? Like obviously the student doesn't have to, but it's a nice kind of fun and surprising way for students to engage. They're getting information because they're getting that tobacco fact card, but then they're also getting the opportunity to submit it for a raffle prize. This is a really, really great one because it involves our older students and our youngest students. So in this one, it was called Healthy Lung Bubble Blowing Session. And older students from the high school in this club or this group were invited to come to the elementary school and host various different activities with some of the students in the younger grades. This specific one was for their Read Across America event. And older students, high school students, went to the school and just as simple as holding a bubble blowing session. They came with the bubbles and helped the students use the bubbles, and that was it. Have a little talk with them about having healthy lungs and how having healthy lungs allows them to breathe and allows them to be able to blow the bubbles. Very simple, but you're also seeing older students interacting with younger students and taking leadership on educating the younger grades. This one was a scavenger hunt. This was done during like right towards the end of the school closures. So they utilized their Google Classroom a lot. But this would have gone out to the students the morning of, and then students would have the opportunity to use this scavenger hunt list to find different facts. There were 18 facts hidden around the school, and the person who turned in the most facts by the end of the day won first prize, and then the second most won second prize. So it was like a day-long thing where students were able to search campus and find as many facts as they could. Again, this is how you're getting factual information to students. It might be something like a statistic on how vaping affects their health. They're receiving that information, but they're also using it as a fun game to turn in to win a prize. This one was for Takedown Tobacco Day. Students were given the supplies to create a piñata. And though I don't have pictures of all the others, this was the one that came in first place. It was decorated to say "Take Down Tobacco." As winning first place, it was hung in their cafeteria, I think all week or all month. And so this is another fun and creative way for students to, again, compete and be creative, but also with a message. It's fairly inexpensive. It can be displayed all year long if you want. It could be in the classroom, in the cafeteria. It could even be a partner activity. But I always thought this was really interesting because I would never have thought of doing something like this. This is the first part, however. The second part that this school did was after it had been displayed on their school campus, they did a competition for the month of March where they were given facts about the negative effects of tobacco. And if you listened to the TUPE fact of the day and wrote them down, if you turned them in for every single fact that they heard in their announcements for that month, they got to swing at the piñata. So one, the piñata was created by students as a competition, and then two, all the students at the school got to win an opportunity to break the piñata. So they really did a twofold and kind of stretched that activity out. Some other ones, podcasts. Creating podcasts is really huge these days. Students organize the themes for each episode. They conduct the interviews. They do all the research, and then they spread the information and awareness to their peers. This is so great because students are learning about a topic. They're learning the negative effects of smoking or vaping, and then they're sharing it with their peers through a podcast that they completely organize and put together. This can be monthly, weekly. There's even programs that'll allow you to upload these podcasts to things like Spotify and Apple for free. And so it's a really great way to reach students. Digital art contests are really great. We here in TUPE, our TUPE office with our Tier 2 schools. By the way, Tier 2 is just schools who receive funding for this. We hold a PSA contest where students do this kind of work and they create posters, but also PSA videos. This one comes from Alhambra Unified, where students were given directions on what should be included in these. And they're very, very short, 1 minute or less. And we're going to look at a couple of them.
This
is
a
vape.
On the outside, a vape is
Sleek, small,
just flavored water.
harmless.
On the inside, a vape is
0.5 to 15.4 milligrams of nicotine.
70 cancer-causing chemicals.
Deadly.
As of February 18, 2020,
2,807 vape-related hospital cases and deaths have been reported.
But these deaths are only about smokers, right?
Wrong. Non-smokers exposed to secondhand smoke of any kind have an increase of heart disease by 25% to 30%.
with every puff you take, you are putting yourself and others at risk.
Need help stopping?
Call 1-800-NO-BUTS.
Stop today
And live
a vape-free
life.
So as you can see, these videos kind of followed the same sort of system where they were presenting factual information. They explained how the vaping or smoking can be dangerous or unhealthy for the user. And then at the end, there was always some sort of call to action or a resource on how to get help or how to resist. And so these examples are linked at the bottom of this slide. When I share these slides with you, you'll be able to see some examples of others. But you can see how students can get really creative. They can get really into it. There's lots of different ways to do it. There's lots of different free programs for them to do it as well. And what I've seen is students really get into it in terms of how they present it. Some of them even go as far as drawing the animation themselves. And this just allows students to be creative and have fun. But again, it also allows them to engage with factual information about the dangers of vaping, and then also sharing that information with their peers. This one is a PSA contest, but more specifically about self-care and like mental health issues. And so this one is another example of PSA videos, but again, not without the focus on vaping.
Isn't that selfish?
In fact, self-care is not selfish at all.
What does it help with?
Self-care reduces stress and helps you focus on what's important.
Wow, thank you, Damien.
Self-care is not selfish.
So as you can see, these students used TikTok to create that video. We know that our students are on TikTok, adults are on TikTok. I look at TikTok, that's where I'm getting all my soup recipes right now. But why not use something that students are already like influenced by and attracted to and use it for something good? Students don't have to post the video on TikTok, but they can use TikTok's features and TikTok's videos to create something like this. As you can see, this was teaching their peers on healthy coping skills and things that they can do to deal with their stress that wasn't turning to unhealthy things like substance use.
Do you know what self-care is? Self-care is something that should be done every day. It is not selfish, and it is actually something that can help you prevent burnouts and can help you reduce stress. Although it may seem like self-care may make things worse, it actually doesn't. It actually helps you be more productive and can help you reset your mind and body.
So what are some things you could do for self-care?
Some things you can do for self-care is eat healthier and often. You can also hydrate more, so at least 64 to 88 ounces of water per day. You can also get more sleep, at least 8 to 10 hours. Exercise, play a sport, walk around. Get some time for yourself, play video games, talk to your friends, go on social media, listen to music or at least meditate.
So again, these are under 60 seconds. Students are researching to find the facts that they're relating to their peers. They create the PSA. It could be a contest. It could just be a project, but these are some great ways that students can be creative with the health promotion messages that they are doing. So that leaves me with some other resources for you. If you are struggling looking for other activities, we live in the world of AI. And I know that sometimes AI can be controversial to us educators. I love AI. I don't know how I would deal with it in a history class if I was still teaching. I'd have to get creative, but we can use these to find ways of looking for other activities. Here I have linked, and again, I will be sharing these slides with you, are some ways that LACO gives us some trainings on how to use these in our classrooms, how to use them to come up with lesson plans or activities. These are LACO's guidelines and best practices on how to use AI. This can mean ChatGPT, it can mean Copilot, whatever is available to you. But definitely use this as a resource on how to come up with different types of activities that you can learn. One thing that we found while using AI, we had another training earlier, about a month or two, that was called Health Disparities, using student engagement activities with our health disparity group students. And in that presentation or in that training was a little part on how to use AI to come up with some of these activities. How do we come up with health advocates or health advocacy activity ideas with a health disparity lens in order to support some of our student focus groups? As you can see here, there's some clips from that training, specifically Red Ribbon Week events with a focus on LGBTQ plus students. That can include, an awareness day. Whether that is, a lunch carnival or a resource fair, making sure to highlight the dangers of tobacco and vaping within the LGBTQ community, or data that shows how African American and Black students are targeted through big tobacco and what that data looks like. So really looking at our activities with a health disparity lens in order to offer extra support and information for some of our students. Maybe they are students who are unhoused or foster youth, or again, our African American, Black students, Hispanic, Latino students, LGBTQ students. How do we take these activities and really offer those special supports for them? You can see down here the YouTube link to that specific training if you are interested in looking at how do we support our health disparity groups through activities. The link at the very top is going to be the Google folder for all the resources and the slides for that recording or for that training. So if you are interested, I highly suggest watching. I think it's about an hour to an hour and a half training. And again, once I share these resources with you, all of this will be hyperlinked in the slides that I will be giving you. Another resource, it comes out of Orange County's Department of Education. They have an entire toolkit dedicated to substance prevention activities. I really, really like these because of two different things. They organize these in terms of what staff can do at schools and what parents and families can do at home. They also organize these in terms of age level, so the appropriateness for middle school, high school, elementary school, or all. They also organize these in terms of, is this an in-person activity? Is it a virtual activity? Can it be used for both? Orange County does a really, really great job at offering a lot of these resources. This toolkit is constantly updated. So they actually ask for teachers and schools to submit other activities and other events that they add to this list constantly. So if you have a copy of this list already, I encourage you to go back and look to make sure that there aren't new things that have been added. And this is also a great resource, again, to share with families and communities, because this can also be used at home with parents and their students. Another thing that I'm going to share with you and the resources that I will be giving to you are the civic action cards and planners. This actually comes from, again, Dr. Michelle Herzog's training on civic engagement. And this is one of the materials that she shares on how to work with students to come up with a topic. What is the problem of that topic? Engage in civic inquiry and discussions on what that issue is and how they will take informed action. It will look something like this. So a really great example would be, for instance, secondhand smoke. Students have decided an event, a place, or a process that they want to focus on. They have decided that the problem is something that needs to be addressed by society. So for instance, for them, their city does not have a smoking policy or an ordinance for public places and multifamily housing, and that's something that they want to focus on. When it comes to the civic inquiry question, which is the question that you ask, how do you find solutions or take informed action? They decided that they want to ask the question on how to raise awareness of the dangers of secondhand smoke and what are the dangers of secondhand smoke. The informed action is, what will you do to solve the problem? Now, this is where students kind of sometimes get stuck, right? Like, what can you do? We want to look at something that can solve the problem. So sure, you can do a Twitter campaign, but is that really going to be the most effective thing that you can do? In the resources that I'm going to give you are cards, right? Students can choose. Maybe instead of a Twitter campaign, contacting an elected official, maybe their mayor or their city council, might be more effective than a Twitter campaign. When doing this work, we also still want to keep in mind the ladder of participation, right? We want students to make these decisions, to come up with the problem, to come up with the solution on their own. And we as adults are either working with them or facilitating and overseeing the process that they are engaging in. The other thing that comes with it is a sheet of empty ones. So students can fill in, or you can fill in some suggestions that students can choose from. So this leads us to our last W, when. That's the whole point of our title, is Beyond Red Ribbon Week. Why or when can we do this that is beyond that 1 week in October, where we are constantly advocating and promoting healthy decisions and healthy skills through our youth advocacy groups? So one thing is, don't forget about your school district calendars, right? School districts and school sites have things like parent-teacher conferences, back to school night, open house, PBIS week. My school had a Hispanic Heritage Month. Don't reinvent the wheel. If there are places that you can fit yourself into the dates that already exist. For me, I came from a school that had a tradition of doing a Day of the Dead community event. It was huge. It wasn't just for students. It wasn't just for family. We invited businesses from the community who would come and either donate or sell, whether it was their food or their products. We invited city officials, we invited board members, school board members, we invited other schools and other students, and it was a huge thing. And just having a table there for, healthy coping skills, or maybe a table of anti-vaping, anti-smoking would be a perfect thing to do, because the event already exists. I just need to fit my group and my students and our health promotion in with the event that already exists. So keeping it in mind, the things that already exist beyond Red Ribbon Week, this can mean that you're having a booth at the check-in table at back to school night, right? You're catching parents and you're catching students at an event that they're already going to attend. For those of you who work at high school sites, you know how hard it is to get parents to come to things. A lot of times my students, parents wouldn't come because their students were already older and they kind of felt that they've gone to all the parent teacher conferences, they've gone to all the back to school nights, and our attendance was really low. So trying to catch families and trying to catch parents at things that they're already coming to. Maybe it's the football game, maybe it's homecoming. You want to be able to fit yourself into those existing structures already. Beyond that, we can also look at the national calendar. There are a lot of different places that we can fit this health promotion into what's already out there. So a great example would be like national holidays. One really great one that I loved was for Valentine's Day. They actually called it Healthy Relationships Days. And the entire message and theme for that day was about having healthy relationships, might be teaching students about consent. What are toxic friendships and what do non-toxic friendships look like? And so they really honed in on rebranding Valentine's Day to a health promotion, healthy SEL kind of theme. And again, relabeled it as Healthy Relationships Day. You have your low-hanging fruit, right? The medical health days. You have the American Heart Month, the Great American Smokeout. These are definitely days where you can have an event that isn't Red Ribbon Week, right? They happen throughout the year. Mental health, you can talk about National Stress Awareness, National Mental Health Day. At my school, we had two opportunities to do that. One was in December, where just people, right, humans, tend to experience more depression in the winter and holiday seasons than any other time of the year. Another time is during finals, right? For some of our students, that happens either 2 or 3 times a year. Those are very high stressful years or weeks. For high schoolers, it's not just finals. You also have AP exams or international baccalaureate exams. Those are very stressful times. So mental health initiatives during that time would be helpful. Academic, you have Read Across America, or again, even testing season. And then you have your cultural and historical dates. Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month. These are all great times to have events centered around some of these topics. They can be about healthy coping skills, meditation, exercise, healthy hobbies. You can talk for Black History or Pride Month about how some of those communities are targeted by big vape and big tobacco, and what the statistics look like for those groups versus their counterparts. So these are all days, again, that you can center around some of this work that goes beyond Red Ribbon Week. A great resource is Kick It California. They have a social media toolkit. And within that social media toolkit, they offer a calendar every single year in places where you can do some of this work. It might be Healthy Heart Day, or it might be Women's History Month, or Healthy Lung Month. And so you can kind of see here, it's really small, but they highlight and underline all these different opportunities where you could be doing some of this work. They also have a Google Calendar that will allow you to add all of these dates to your Google Calendar so that it's there. You can see it. If you are the one in charge of arranging these activities and events on your campus, you can easily add it all to your Google Calendar. Another great place to look would be these two websites, National Day and National Day Calendar. I know they sound similar or exactly the same, but they're similar. And in these websites, you can actually filter some of your searches. So you can say, just show me like medical days, and that'll show you things like, again, like Healthy Lung Day or Healthy Heart Day. You can ask it to show you specific days like holidays. You can filter all of them and again, try to find different dates to do this. These are some examples, right? We have October, which is Red Ribbon Week, and we've got that covered. But November can be the Great American Smokeout. December could be Suicide Prevention Week. January could be Weedless Wednesday. These are all real calendar dates that you can attach or associate some of your activities to. Finally, here are some resources and other organizations that are already doing this work with young people that you can either tap into or take resources from. Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. They work specifically with tobacco issues only. They have advocacy tools that you can use, and they also have an advocacy action guide. So something that you can use when working with your students if you are the one heading these advocacy groups. Youth Leadership Institute has youth opportunities for them to get involved either locally in their county or city, and they can get involved with youth advocacy in the areas of education, social justice, health justice, environmental, racial, and other topics. California Youth Advocacy Network is specifically centered around tobacco use. They also have a toolkit on youth advocacy that you can download and use. They cover both K through 12 and also college level as well. They have a statewide youth advocacy conference in the summer that students, if they are interested, they can apply for. And then we here at LACO in our TUPE unit also work with Friday Night Live, which is a group that comes in and does student activities and student work. They sort of build capacity with the staff on campus. They are not just about tobacco use, they also do substance use. So drinking and driving, gambling, any sort of addictions that students can experience. And then finally, some of the resources that I talked about today will be here. Restless Development is a great resource on how to work with youth and how to share power with students. We have our KGIT California social media calendar and all the resources that come with that. And then, of course, the website for peer advocates, training, and consulting. Which brings me to our resources. What do we have for you to support you in the work that you're doing? And what can we offer to you in terms of training or resources? As I mentioned, all of our trainings are free. If you are interested in being trained on Hillary Roberts' peer advocacy training on how to build these peer advocacy groups, how to run them, how to recruit for them, you will find that training at this link. What you will also find there is the asynchronous version of today's training or presentation. We have a course that is self-guided that you can take on how to engage youth and promote health advocacy beyond Red Ribbon Week. It has all the same information that I presented today, except it's asynchronous and self-guided. So if this is something that you maybe want to revisit, or you have a colleague that you thought this would have been a really great training for, you have one of two options. You can either share the self-guided course here, or again, I will be sharing this recording and the slides with you that they can also watch, but you have two different ways to engage with this training. It is there for you in those two different ways that you can decide what you want to interact with best. And feel free to share it with whoever you feel might benefit from it. It will take you through all the different aspects that I mentioned today. It will link all of the resources. It goes through again, the why, the where, the when. It's just packaged in a different way. Our next upcoming training is about intervention programs. So if you are interested in what do you do with those tier 2 students who are being caught vaping, what kind of programs are out there, we will be hosting this on December 3rd and talking about 3 different programs: Why Vape, Stanford's Healthy Futures, and Brief Intervention, and how those programs work when it comes to intervention. After that is an actual Why Vape training. So we have invited somebody from Why Vape to come and give a webinar on what is Why Vape, how do you use it, does it fit best for your school and your campus, how do you get signed up, and what you need to do in order to participate in that referral program. That will be on December 11th. It's free and it'll be virtual. Falling in line with that, we will also have a training on healthy futures. So if you come to that first training and you're like, I really loved healthy futures, I want to get trained on that, this training will be December 12th. We will have a representative from Stanford come and talk about the Healthy Futures Alternative to Suspension program, how to use it in their intervention programs, what you need to do to use it, how to use it, and how it was built. And finally, our peer program development. This is the one hosted by Hillary Roberts. We are having her come out here to Downey on March 5th and 6th to train people on how to do peer programming. This is a in-person training. However, we are offering it for free. If you do come to this, you will get a copy of her book and the guides and all the different resources that she talks about during that training on the building blocks and the fundamentals of starting a peer program, sustaining that peer program, how to facilitate it, and how to run them. Again, out of our offices, we offer trainings. We also offer free educational materials. So if you're having a back to school night and you need some pamphlets, feel free to contact us. We will send them out to you. If you want us to come out and table an event and bring educational materials with us, we will do that as well. We are here to support you in any of the work at any stage that you are doing around tobacco use prevention. With that, if you have questions, if you want to contact us to come out to your school, or have questions about trainings, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here to support you and your efforts at your site. That was a lot of information, but I want to thank you all for bearing with me and sticking with me. As promised, I will send you all of these resources. I hope you have a great day, and I will stick around if there are any questions left. Other than that, have a nice day, and thank you for coming.